The townhouse in the West Village was a mess of exposed wiring and century-old plaster, the kind of renovation job that required equal parts skill and archaeology. Thorne had been there since 8 in the morning, carefully tracing electrical lines through walls that had been modified and patched and rebuilt so many times that the original construction was barely visible anymore. The owner, a finance guy who'd bought the place as a project, wanted everything updated to modern code while preserving the historical character, which meant Thorne spent most of his time problem-solving rather than just running wire. By 11:30, he'd made enough progress that he could justify taking an extended lunch break. He washed his hands in the first-floor bathroom, grabbed his jacket, and headed out into the cold January afternoon. The walk from the West Village to Lower Manhattan wasn't short, but it was doable, and Thorne needed the time to think. The streets were crowded with the usual midday chaos, tourists taking photos, business people rushing to lunch meetings, delivery trucks double-parked and blocking traffic. Thorne moved through it all with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd lived in New York long enough to know how to navigate crowds. He cut south on 6th Avenue, then east toward City Hall and the Civic Center, where the Department of Buildings maintained its offices. The Manhattan Borough office was at 280 Broadway, a municipal building that looked exactly like what it was, government bureaucracy made concrete. Thorne had been here before for permit applications and inspection scheduling, the tedious administrative side of running an electrical contracting business. But he'd never requested historical building plans before. He wasn't entirely sure what to expect. The lobby was fluorescent bright and echoing, with security guards checking IDs and directing people to different departments. Thorne found the right floor and followed the signs to records and plans. The office was a maze of filing cabinets and microfilm readers, staffed by clerks who looked like they'd been working there since the buildings they kept records of had first been constructed. He approached the counter where a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain sat typing something into an ancient computer. Her nameplate read, Gloria Martinez.
Help you?
I'd like to request copies of the original building plans for a property in Gramercy Park, 27 Gramercy Park South. It was constructed in 1927.
Gloria looked up from her computer, her expression shifting to something between interest and resignation.
1927. That's pre-war. Records from that era can be incomplete.
I know, but I'd like to see whatever you have on file.
She turned back to her computer, typing in the address. Thorne waited, watching her face for any reaction. After a moment, she frowned.
That's interesting.
What is?
We have a file for that address, but it's been accessed recently. Someone else requested these plans about 7 months ago.
Thorne felt something cold settle in his stomach. 7 months ago would have been around June or July, right before Dr. Chen disappeared.
Who requested them?
Gloria clicked through a few more screens.
Says here, Dr. E. Chen requested June 15th of last year, took copies of several pages.
It was her. Dr. Chen had been here, looking at the same plans Thorne was about to look at. What had she found? What had she seen that made her run?
Can I still see the file?
Sure. But I should mention, there's a note in the system that this file is flagged as incomplete. Says here that several pages were removed in 1954. No explanation given for why they were removed or where they went.
What pages specifically?
Gloria clicked through a few more screens.
Looks like the mechanical system schematics, ventilation, ductwork, heating. The structural plans are here, foundation, framing, floor layouts. But anything to do with how air moved through the building is just gone.
Is that normal?
For buildings from that era? Sometimes. Records get lost, damaged, misfiled. But usually when pages go missing, it's accidental. This one's flagged as an intentional removal. Someone pulled those pages from the file and noted it in the system.
Who pulled them?
Doesn't say. Just says, removed by order of building owner. January 1954. After that, there's no record of where the documents went or why they were removed.
1954. 27 years after the building was constructed. During that time, the Prohibition era would have been long over, The mob money that financed the Ashford would have dried up or moved on to other ventures. But someone had still cared enough about those ventilation plans to have them officially removed from public record.
Can I see what's left? The structural plans, the floor layouts?
Sure, give me a few minutes to pull the file from archives.
Gloria disappeared into the back room, leaving Thorne alone at the counter. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. Nearly noon. He had maybe an hour before he needed to get back to the West Village job, but he could stretch it if he needed to. This felt important in a way he couldn't quite articulate yet. While he waited, he thought about Dr. Chen. She'd been here 7 months ago, requesting these same plans, looking for the same answers Thorne was looking for now, and then she'd vanished. Had she found something? Had someone found out she was looking? Gloria returned 15 minutes later carrying a large flat file box. She set it on the counter and opened it carefully, revealing yellowed architectural plans that smelled like old paper and dust.
This is what we have: foundation plans, structural framing, floor layouts, exterior elevations. You can look through them here, and if you want copies, it's 50 cents a page.
Thorne spread the first plan out on the counter. It was the foundation layout showing the building's footprint and the structural supports that carried the weight of 8 floors. The draftsmanship was meticulous, every line precise, every measurement noted in careful hand lettering. This was from an era when architectural plans were works of art, not just technical documents. He moved to the next sheet, the first floor layout, then the second floor, the third, working his way up through the building. When he reached the 4th floor, he stopped. Something was wrong. The 4th floor plan showed only 3 apartments, 4B, 4C, and 4D. The northwest corner, where his apartment should be, where 4A should be, was labeled differently. It wasn't an apartment at all. It was marked as mechanical service room, ventilation access. Thorne stared at the plan, his heart pounding. In 1927, when the Ashford was originally constructed, there was no apartment 4A. The northwest corner of the 4th floor was a mechanical room, a service space for the building's ventilation system. He flipped back to the building summary page, the sheet that listed all the basic information about the property. Under total residential units, it said 26 apartments, 26, not 27. James had told him the Ashford had 27 apartments, 27 units at address 27, built in 1927, the numerological significance that everyone mentioned. But originally there had only been 26 apartments, which meant the 27th apartment, 4A, his apartment, had been added later. Thorne pulled out his phone and took photos of the 4th floor plan, making sure to capture the mechanical service room label clearly. Then he photographed the building summary showing 26 units.
Can I get copies of these pages?
Sure.
Gloria took the plans to a large format scanner in the corner. While she worked, Thorne's mind raced. If 4A had originally been a mechanical room for ventilation access, that explained everything. The acoustic connection to 4B wasn't a quirk or an accident. It was the entire purpose of that space. A room designed to access and monitor the ventilation ducts that served apartment 4B, and then in 1954, someone had converted that mechanical room into an apartment. The same year, the ventilation schematics were removed from the public record. They'd turned a surveillance room into a residential unit, but they'd kept the acoustic connection intact. When Gloria returned with the copies, Thorne paid for them and asked a question.
Is there any way to find out when the building changed from 26 to 27 apartments? When that mechanical room was converted?
Gloria typed something into her computer.
Looks like there was a renovation permit filed in 1954. January 1954. Same time frame as when those ventilation pages were removed. The permit application says, "Conversion of 4th floor service room to residential unit." After that, the building is listed as having 27 apartments.
Who filed the permit?
The building owner at the time. Let me see. Gramercy Holdings, LLC. That's all it says. No individual names.
Gramercy Holdings. Probably one of the shell companies the original mob investors used to hide their identities, and in 1954 they decided to convert the surveillance room into an apartment to hide its original purpose behind a facade of residential normalcy, but they'd kept the capability. kept the ducts that let sound travel from 4B to what was now 4A. Because maybe they still needed it. Maybe the surveillance was still valuable, even decades after Prohibition ended.
Thank you. You've been really helpful.
No problem. Oh, one more thing. If you want to sign out the file for research purposes, I need you to fill out this form.
She slid a clipboard across the counter with a request form attached. Thorne looked at it. Name, address, phone number, purpose of research, signature, and then he saw it, a log sheet attached to the back of the clipboard. A list of everyone who'd requested this file in the past 5 years. There was only one name, Dr. Emma Chen, June 15, 2025. She'd signed her real name, and then she'd disappeared a month later. Thorne's hand hovered over the form. If he signed his real name, whoever was monitoring this file would know immediately. They'd know Thorne St. James, tenant of apartment 4A, had requested the plans, just like they'd known when Dr. Chen requested them. Is that what had happened to her? Had she signed this form and then Augustus Westbrook found out and then, what? Threatened her? Paid her off? Scared her badly enough that she abandoned her entire life? Thorne made a decision. He filled out the form with a fake name, John Morrison, and gave a fake address in Queens. For purpose of research, he wrote, Historical Architecture Project Academic. He signed the fake name and handed the clipboard back to Gloria.
All set. Thanks again.
He left the office with the rolled-up floor plans under his arm, his mind reeling. Everything was falling into place now. The thick wall between 4A and 4B wasn't a construction quirk. It was the wall of the original mechanical room, the space that had housed ventilation equipment and provided access to the ducts. The acoustic connection wasn't accidental. It was the fundamental purpose of that room's existence. Someone had built apartment 4B as a special residence in 1927, and someone had built the room next to it specifically to monitor what happened inside. For mob surveillance during Prohibition, probably. To make sure Vincent Calabrese wasn't cutting deals with the authorities or betraying his partners. And then in 1954, they'd converted the surveillance room to an apartment and removed the ventilation schematics from public record. Hidden the evidence. Made it look like just another residential unit. But the ducts were still there. The acoustic connection still worked, and whoever owned the building could still use it. Augustus Westbrook owned the building now, had owned it for 15 years, and his daughter lived in 4B, the apartment that had been designed to be monitored. While he controlled who lived in 4A, the apartment that could hear everything. Dr. Chen had figured this out, had come to this same office, looked at these same plans, seen that 4A was originally a mechanical room, and then she disappeared. Thorne walked quickly toward the subway, his paranoia increasing with every step. Had he made a mistake using a fake name? Would they check? Would they figure out it was fraudulent? Or had he just bought himself time, a few days or weeks before Augustus realized someone else was investigating the Ashford secrets? The subway ride back to the West Village felt interminable. Thorne kept the rolled-up plans tucked under his arm, protective, paranoid that someone might try to take them. He knew he was being irrational. These were just copies, public records that anyone could request. But they felt like evidence. Like proof of something Augustus Westbrook had spent decades trying to hide. By the time he got back to the townhouse job site, it was nearly 2 o'clock. The finance guy who owned the place was there, looking irritated.
Where were you? You said you'd be back by 1.
Sorry, had to run an errand. I'll make up the time.
Thorne threw himself into the work, grateful for something physical and straightforward to focus on. Running wire, making connections, testing circuits. Problems that had clear solutions, unlike the mystery he was unraveling at the Ashford. But even as he worked, his mind kept circling back to those plans. 26 apartments in 1927, 27 apartments after 1954. Apartment 4A didn't exist originally. It was a mechanical room, a surveillance space, a listening post. And Dr. Chen had discovered this. Had stood in the same records office, had seen the same plans, had signed her real name on the same request form, and then had vanished without a trace. Thorne finished the day's work around 5:30, packed up his tools, and headed back to the Ashford. The subway was crowded with evening commuters, Everyone tired and staring at their phones, nobody making eye contact. He felt invisible in the crowd, anonymous. Just another working guy heading home after a long day. But when he walked into the Ashford's lobby, James looked up from the desk and something flickered in his expression. Nothing obvious, nothing Thorne could point to, but something had changed. Some subtle shift in how James looked at him.
Evening, Mr. St. James.
Evening.
Thorne headed for the elevators, feeling James's eyes on him the whole way. Was he being paranoid? Or had something happened? Had someone called the building, asked about him, warned the staff to watch him? When he reached his apartment, he locked the door and dropped his tool bag by the entrance. The apartment was quiet. Violette wouldn't be home for hours yet. She usually didn't get back until 9 or 10 at night, sometimes even later. He had time to think, to piece together what he'd learned. He spread the floor plans out on his kitchen table and studied them again. The northwest corner of the 4th floor labeled Mechanical Service Room, Ventilation Access. The building summary showing 26 apartments, the missing ventilation schematics, removed the same year. The mechanical room was converted to residential use. It all pointed to one conclusion. Apartment 4A was purpose-built for surveillance, and that purpose had never really changed, even when they'd hidden it behind drywall and furniture and the veneer of residential normalcy. Around 8:30, he heard the first sounds from Violette's apartment. Not her coming home, just the ambient noise of the building settling, the radiator clanging to life. But it reminded him that the wall was there, that the connection was active, that he could hear into her life anytime he wanted. He tried to focus on other things. Made himself dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, nothing fancy, and ate it while scrolling through his phone. He searched for information about building conversions in the 1950s, about mechanical rooms being turned into apartments, but there wasn't much available online, just general information about NYC building codes and renovation permits. Around 9:15, he heard Violette come home, her key in the lock, her footsteps, her bag dropping by the door. But then he heard something else. More footsteps, heavier, a man's voice. Augustus was with her. Thorne moved closer to the wall, listening.
How are you holding up, sweetheart? You sounded exhausted on the phone.
Violette's voice was tired, but warmer than Thorne had heard it with her father before.
Long week. The Singapore expansion is more complicated than Marcus thought it would be.
I'm sure it is. You hungry? I thought we could grab a bite. There's that Italian place you like on 23rd.
Dad, I'm really tired. Maybe another night?
Come on. When's the last time we had dinner together, just the two of us? Your mother's at some charity thing. Harrison's in Europe. It'll be good for you to get out of this apartment for an hour.
A pause. Thorne could hear Violette considering it.
Okay. Let me just change out of this suit.
Take your time. I'll wait.
Thorne heard Violette's footsteps moving toward what must be her bedroom. Then Augustus spoke again, his voice slightly different now, still warm but with an edge underneath.
I wanted to talk to you about something, actually. Nothing serious, just something that came across my desk today.
What's that?
Her voice was slightly muffled by distance.
Someone requested the original building plans for the Ashford from the city records office.
There was a pause. Thorne's blood went cold.
Why would someone do that?
Could be anything. Historians, architecture students, real estate developers doing research. It happens from time to time with buildings this old. I just like to know when people are poking around in my properties.
How do you even find out about something like that?
Augustus's voice had a casual quality to it, almost amused.
I have a friend who keeps an eye on things for me. Former detective, actually. Lives in the building. 7A, Ray Carver. You've met him, haven't you?
Violette's voice was careful.
Once or twice, in the elevator.
He's got connections at the city still. Does some consulting work for me, helps me keep tabs on various things. Real estate issues, tenant screening, that sort of thing. He mentioned someone pulled the file yesterday.
Did he say who?
Not yet. He's looking into it. Probably nothing to worry about, but I like to be thorough. This building has a lot of history, and not all of it needs to be dredged up by curious amateurs, you know?
Violette emerged from the bedroom. Thorne could hear her footsteps, could picture her in casual clothes now instead of the work suit.
Ready?
Yeah, let me just grab my coat.
Good. And Violette? If anyone approaches you with questions about the building's history, tenants, staff, anyone, just let me know, all right? I don't want you getting pulled into some tedious historical survey or something.
Sure, Dad.
I'm not being paranoid. I just protect what's mine. This building, this family. That's all that matters.
The door opened. Their voices faded as they moved into the hallway. The door closed. They were gone. Thorne stood against the wall, his heart pounding. Ray Carver, apartment 7A, former detective. Augustus's eyes and ears, his investigator, the person who keeps an eye on things. And Carver was looking into who requested the building plans, which meant it was only a matter of time before the fake name got traced back to Thorne. Before Augustus connected the dots between the curious tenant in 4A and the person investigating the Ashford's construction history, Thorne had thought he was being paranoid about being watched, but he wasn't paranoid enough. Augustus didn't just own the building, he had a former detective living in it, monitoring requests at the city, investigating anyone who showed too much interest in the Ashford secrets, and that detective was about to figure out that John Morrison didn't exist, that the address on the request form was fake, that someone had deliberately tried to hide their identity, and when that happened, Augustus would start looking at his own tenants. At the people who lived in the Ashford and had reason to care about its construction history. At the electrician in apartment 4A who'd been asking questions about the building since the day he moved in. Thorne walked to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water with shaking hands. He needed to think, needed to plan, needed to figure out his next move before Ray Carver, whoever he was, figured out the truth. But first he needed to know more about the man in 7A, the former detective who worked for Augustus Westbrook, the person who stood between Thorne and whatever he was going to do next. Because if Augustus had someone in the building watching, investigating, reporting back, then Thorne wasn't just fighting against a billionaire's resources. He was fighting against someone who knew how to find people who didn't want to be found, someone who'd probably helped Dr. Chen disappear, and someone who might do the same to him.
Thanks for listening, and please subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
And for early access and bonus episodes, become a Patreon supporter today.